Hello, YouTube. Sidekick here with another installment of It's Not You, It's ME, our series of tutorials on the Mission Editor. So far, we've looked at making a simple mission and making things move. And then in the last video, we took a look at some basic use of triggers. And I encourage you to go back and look at those if you haven't already. What we're doing today probably make a little bit more sense if you've looked at the other stuff. So we're just going to load our mission in here. Today's just going to be a fairly simple review of some other kinds of triggers you can use. Mostly we're going to talk about triggers that will let you mark things on the map. It's not terribly exciting, but it's useful to see some of those things in action. So here's our mission. We have our planes at Mozdok. We have our convoy that moves around the square. We're not really going to look at the convoy today. We're just going to look at some other types of triggers. Like I said, triggers where you can mark things on the map. Just checking to make sure everything's set up the way I want it here. So the first thing that I want to do is just set up a series of zones. Let's see, where would be good? Let's put them on the other side of the airport, and we can just see them without having to move the camera very much. Oh, I like that little road in the satellite view. So we'll just put, say, 5 zones along that road, and then that gives us 5 different places to place different effects. So to review, to place a zone, you click on the Add Zone. Important to set the radius that you want, and then you can name it, and then you can set a color. And then you can go and do it again. And one thing you can do is you can use the zone sizes to actually space things regularly, because I know if these two zones are touching, then their centers are 400 feet apart because their radius is 200. So that's a useful way of, if you need to place things at a regular interval, you can actually use zones just kind of to set up a grid sort of system. So we're just adding our zones here. Putting space in them. They don't have to be regularly spaced, but it's just kind of useful to learn how to do that. Now, the one thing we can do is we can actually do the Control-C, Control-V thing and actually copy a zone. And then we just give it a different name, and then we can do that again. Got to make sure you highlight the zone, though. And see, it's not letting me do that because the airport warehouse is selected, so I have to kill that. Then I can select the zone. Then I can Control-C, Control-V. So it's not you, it's the Mission Editor. Okay, so now we have 5 zones where we can do some things. We'll be able to see them if we jump into our Su-25 and then look back over the airplane. We'll be able to see those zones on the far side of the runway. So we want them there because we're going to look at a bunch of different ways so you can put marks on the ground. And there's quite a few ways that you can do that in DCS using triggers, so let's look at some of them. So first we'll go into triggers. We'll just pick the trigger that we'd already set up, the one that trips when the Su-25T gets to the taxiway. So that's not it. That's the good morning message. Yeah, let's pick this one. So let's add another trigger to the bottom of that, so that when it trips that trigger, we're also going to place a mark on the ground. We're going to do that with an effect. Smoke effect, and there's a bunch of ones you can choose from. So on test 1, we'll put a small smoke and fire, and then we'll add different effects at the different zones. And it's easy to do by just cloning it and then coming down and just changing the parameter that you want to change. Clone it again, put it in a different zone. Get a different zone, make it a little bigger. Again. That's so we've got small, medium, large, and huge. And then I guess for the last one, we'll just put in a small smoke that doesn't have a fire, so we can see what that looks like. Or yeah, small smoke, no fire. Okay, so we put in 5 different things that should happen in those 5 different zones when we trip the trigger when the Su-25 reaches the runway. So let's just go into the mission and see what it looks like. First, remember to save, of course. All right, so we only have the one airplane to choose from. Okay, so as I said, we can just go to F2 view, spin around. There's our friend. He starts to move. We'll just look over the back of our aircraft, and we'll see the effects appear when he trips that trigger. So let's just this way. Right up there. Okay, so now when we look on the horizon, we see small, medium, large, huge smoke and fire, and then small smoke. So that's what they kind of look like from that distance. So those are effects that you can use. If we wanted to see them from a different perspective here, we can go to our F10 view or Control F11 and then zoom in and take a look at the fires. So that's what smoke effects look like. That's one way that you can mark things on the ground with DCS. Okay, so that's one kind of marker we can place with a trigger. That's a smoke effect. We can also use a colored smoke marker. To find those, you look for smoke marker. Now you have a range of different colors you can use. Let's see, I'm just going to delete those because it's easier to clone that one. So we got green, we can go red, we can go white, we can go orange, and we can go blue. Now maybe it's also interesting just to see what it looks like if you put these at different altitudes. So these don't have to be touching the ground. You can actually have them sort of hanging in space. So why don't we just go and put a couple of different altitudes in here so we can see what that looks like on the map. Okay, let's go check that out. Okay, so once again, we just drop into the game. Gonna hit F2. Turn around. Look back that way. Make sure our friend is moving. Out a little bit. There he goes. And she gets on the taxiway. Now we can see we get smoke mark. See the green one. You can't see the other ones as they're up too high. So just a sec. Let's F10 out and then Control F11 in, and then you can see all of them. And if I fly down a little bit, and by the way, with 2.7 now you can fly forward with W, back with S, left and right with A and D, which is a great development. Makes this stuff a lot easier. So there you can see the smoke marks climbing up into the sky, and they're a lot thicker than they used to be in DCS 2.6. That's another change with 2.7. Now, if you want to see what they all look like, that was a little odd, so maybe we just take a look at what they look like on the ground, but that's easy to do as well. We just go in here, bring our trigger up again, and then all we have to do is go into each one and set the altitude back to 1. So let's just speed that up a little bit. Okay, and then we'll just go back out and take a look what that looks like on the ground. Once again, there's our friend. And as he moves out to the taxiway, let's take a look here and see what it looks like. Let's move left on the ground. And there's the message, and there's the smoke. Okay, let's try something a little bit more complicated. You can see here I've taken the trigger and have added a thing called explosion this time, which will actually cause an explosion to happen at the location, at that zone. But now, rather than having a whole bunch of explosions that all happen at once, let's set up a way of doing this so that we can get a bunch of explosions that happen one after another, and we'll make them in increasing size. So remember that we set flag 10 on the first trigger. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a condition that waits a second after flag 10 is set, and then adds an explosion at the second zone, and then sets flag 11. And then if I clone that, then all I have to do is I just say, change this flag to flag 11. So we wait on flag 11, and then we go to test zone 3, add another explosion, slightly larger, and then we set flag 12. Okay, and then we clone that again. So this time we wait for flag 12, which was the last flag. Go in, we put the explosion in the next zone, make it a little bigger. And let's just get the right size explosions here. I noticed that one was the wrong size. And then we'll set this, increment this flag, clone it again, increment the flag here, go here, make it a little bigger. Or we'll put it in test zone 5, make it a little bigger. And that's all of the zones. Let's just check to make sure we've got the ones we want. So that sets flag 11. That waits for 11 and sets 12. That waits for 12 and sets 13. And then actually we don't need this flag anymore because nothing's coming after. Okay, well, let's save it, and let's take a look and see what that looks like. Okay, here we are starting the game. As per usual. Let's just look over the back of the aircraft, give ourselves enough room. There's our friend moving. We'll be moving. There he goes. Okay, so let's take a look. So we should get 5 explosions, one after the other, from right to left. There's 50, there's 100, 200, 400, and 800. All right, so that's good. So that's not only are we taking a look at the fact that we can explode things in DCS, but also taking a little bit of a look about how to get a series of triggers to go sequentially. So we could also use that instead of explosion. There's one other one that I wanted to show you, which is signal flare. It's not as exciting as explosion, but it's also something you might want to use. Once again, with signal flare, you get to choose the color, but you also have to choose the direction it's going to launch in. 90 degrees makes sense to me, going east. And then we'll take a look at, we'll set this one to signal flare as well. So same thing, these will go sequentially 1 second apart. Signal flare, test 2, but we'll make it red. We'll make it 90. And then we'll get the next 2, and those will go to the right. This one will go to the left. So same thing, find signal flare. And we'll make it white, but we'll make it 270. And then we'll do the last one. Same thing, signal flare. And this time we'll do the last color orange, and we'll also do it at 270. And then we won't need the 5th one. So we'll Just delete that. Okay, let's save it and see what it looks like. Actually, I'm going to increment the save here and go. Okay, these might be a little harder to see, but we'll watch out there on the horizon. All right, there he goes. So let's go back and look. There's one to the right, two to the right, one to the left, two to the left. So that's what signal flares. Okay, so we've looked at putting smoke effects on the ground. We've looked at putting colored smoke on the ground. We've looked at putting explosions on the ground, and we've looked at signal flares. So there's one more thing I want to look at, which is actually modifying the scenery base. So you can actually change the way the permanent scenery looks with triggers as well. And this is a good way to check out the new type of zone. So I'm going to name it. I'm going to set it to 200, but then I'm going to set it, instead of being circular, I'm going to make it quad points. Now you click on edit, and then you can actually drag the corners of the zone to wherever you want them, like this. Now it's covering those fuel tanks. Move it in a little bit more. And then you click edit. And then so it goes, click off, then you can click it, then we can do a Control C, Control V. Control C, Control V, and put it down there. And then again, I'll go up, click on edit, and then I can move the corner points around. Okay, and then we'll do that. Click on edit to clean it. Click again, then we can Control C, Control V it again. And so now we have 3 zones that cover the 3 essentially fuel storage depots. So let's take a look at what we can do with scenery elements. We'll go into triggers. So for the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to use a scenery remove trigger. So this will just take away all the scenery. There won't be anything left. It'll just be like it wasn't there at all. And the second one, let's do a scenery destruction, but we won't do full destruction. We'll do 50% destruction in zone 2 or zone 1. And in the last one, we'll do 100% destruction. 100. And then for good measure, why don't we actually put a little smoke effect down so we can, looks like whatever we destroyed is actually burning at the beginning of the mission. So we'll just put a smoke effect. Let's call it, what do we call it? Let's call it a medium fire. And on the same zone as where we did the 100%. Scenery destruction. Okay, so this should go the same way. These things should happen sequentially as soon as that trigger goes. Let's just increment the save again. And let's go take a look and see what this looks like. All right, so I'm just going to go to F10, get a little bit closer. Here we go to Control F11, look around, use the W key to move in. Get a little closer so we can see what actually happened. Okay, so now we're just waiting. When we get our trigger message that the SU-25T is on the taxiway, stuff should start to happen. There it is, and the first set of tanks disappeared. The second set of tanks didn't seem to do very much. They are damaged, you just can't really tell. And then the third set of tanks basically were destroyed, and then we started a fire on top. So those triggers are particularly ones that you might want to use, say, at the beginning of a mission to kind of set the scene. Let's say you're doing a mission that follows on a previous mission, and Some things were destroyed in the previous mission. You may want to show them as being destroyed, or you may want to replace some structures that are there in the game with different structures. So you can do a little bit of redesigning of the terrain at the beginning of the mission, or in response to things that happen during the mission. So you can see that we're starting to build a library of ways of interacting with the world using the triggers. The triggers can either be in response to a condition that happens during the mission, but sometimes the triggers can just be things that you do at the beginning of the mission. But the whole idea is that you can change the game in ways that you want to. And so that was really the point of today's little tutorial, was looking at some things, other things that DCS makes available to you in terms of really kind of just interacting with the world. Some of them are just markers that you may want to put down, but some of them will actually either, we can cause explosions, we can cause scenery to disappear. So you can start thinking about ways that you might want to use those triggers when you're setting up your mission. So that's going to do it for today. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. As per usual, if you're enjoying these videos, please do subscribe to the channel and like them, and let your friends know. And next time, maybe we'll start thinking about making a slightly more involved mission than the one we made before, using some of these things that we now know about triggers and zones and things like that. Until then, this is going to be Sidekick, signing off.